Ah, a cold winter's night, the perfect time for a Christmas ghost story. The following tale takes us to Hampshire in England in the early 1800s. And it was a cold, snowy night when the Lavelle family and the family of his bride all gathered at Bramshill House. It was a rather large property and the two rich families entertained each other all night with parlour games. As the remaining decorations and mistletoe were being hung round, yawns started to occur, people were getting tired. So a game was thought up by the groom. The bride-to-be would hide somewhere within the rather grand home, and all the groomsmen would have to find her. Whoever did would be awarded with a friendly kiss under the mistletoe. And so, as the clock struck midnight, the game began. The frantic bride, Lady Lavelle or soon-to-be, searched all of the bedrooms and up in the attic found an old chest. The perfect hiding spot, she thought. So, unlocking the latch, she climbed in. But suddenly its heavy lid slammed shut on top of her and would not open. Now, the searching of the groomsmen went from minutes to hours. The bride-to-be was nowhere to be found. Eventually, fearing she perhaps ran away into the icy cold countryside and perished, they had half the village searching for her, but she could not be found. Lord Lavelle had no choice but to eventually move on. Over 50 years later and now a grandfather, his son opened the old trunk in the attic room covered in dust and cobwebs. Inside was the skeletal remains of would-be Lady Lavelle. Ever since, Bramshill Hall is said to be notoriously haunted by the ghostly bride, especially around Christmas time. Her sad apparition is seen gliding along the corridors, moaning and screaming for help, but alas, it never comes. Guests that stay over in the house over the festive period have reportedly been awoken in the night by the door creaking open slowly and faint footsteps pattering around their bed. When they open their eyes, the weeping bride-to-be appears before them. And legend has it, if mistletoe is ever hung within the house again, the ghostly bride will choose a new husband whom she will forever attach to. So, that being said, have a Merry Christmas.
It's no coincidence that the most famous Christmas story is a ghost story. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens was first published in 1843. It tells the story of a man tormented by a series of ghosts the night before Christmas. This story belongs to a once rich, now nearly forgotten tradition of telling ghost stories on Christmas Eve. An old Victorian custom from the mid-1800s into the early 1900s, families would gather around their fireplace and share ghost stories with each other. The frigid weather and long nights were considered the best conditions to share spooky stories. The darker aspects of Christmas have their origins in pagan tradition, like the winter solstice celebration and the festival known as Yule. The darkest day of the year was seen by many as a time when the dead could have access to the living. Legend says that on Christmas Eve, ghosts could walk the earth and finish unsettled business. Unfortunately, the Victorian tradition of telling blood-curdling ghost stories with family around the fireplace on Christmas Eve has been almost completely forgotten. On this Christmas Eve, will you be keeping alive the Victorian tradition? Let me know if you decide to watch Krampus or How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Stay curious.
Does this Christmas photo capture the troubled spirits of soldiers who perished in World War I? The photo, which was taken in 1919, depicts the family of Newton Baker, who served as the United States Secretary of War during the First World War. Although the photo shows Baker's family enjoying a prosperous holiday, the air around them is filled with shimmering apparitions. Baker himself never served in the military, but he oversaw the country's entry into the controversial war in which more than 100,000 American soldiers were lost, making us wonder.
The South Pole Santa was pure evil. In the early 1900s, a man named D. Liver moved to Antarctica to start a package delivery business. Over time, his company became wildly successful, making D wealthy and famous. But what the world didn't know was that D had a dark secret. He kidnapped over 5,000 elders from nursing homes worldwide and forced them to work in his factory. Most were too old to realize what was happening and simply followed orders. Then, in 1913, a plane carrying 4 passengers crashed just a few miles from the factory. The survivors stumbled upon the eerie building. When they peeked inside, they were horrified by what they saw but decided to explore further. Inside an office, they found a telephone and desperately called their loved ones for help. Tragically, their actions didn't go unnoticed. The survivors were quickly captured, thrown into the icy wilderness, and never seen again. Days later, the police tracked the factory down after one survivor's wife provided coordinates from his call. During the raid, D tried to flee in his personal helicopter but crashed nearby due to the intense snowfall. When officers arrived at the crash site, D was gone. They followed footprints in the snow, only to come face to face with a polar bear, standing next to a blue Santa hat discarded in the snow.
When the carolers came to my door, I thought they were just spreading Christmas cheer. I didn't realize they were looking for someone to kill. It started with a knock on the door. I opened it to find a group of carolers, dressed in old-fashioned clothes and singing. Their voices were haunting, almost too perfect. "Nice singing," I said awkwardly, ready to close the door. "Can we come in?" the leader asked, a man with a face too pale and eyes unblinking. "No thanks," I replied, shutting the door. That's when they started screaming. Not singing, screaming. High-pitched, blood-curdling screams that made my skin crawl. I looked through the peephole and saw them clawing at the door, their fingers unnaturally long and sharp, their lips pulling back from their teeth. I pulled out my cell and called the cops, but the line was dead. "How is that even possible?" I let out. The screams stopped, replaced by laughter. "You can't hide forever," the leader said, his voice dripping with malice. They broke the windows, crawling in like spiders. I grabbed a kitchen knife and slashed at the first one, but it didn't even flinch. I bolted out the back door as they closed in. "You should have invited us in," the leader yelled as I jumped the fence. "We'll go ahead and make ourselves at home."